Here's an International Energy Agency report about emissions. And this is the conversation here. There's this kind of stages of denial, this kind of like stages of climate denial. And it's like, well, no, the Earth isn't warming. Well, it's warming. Well, it's not humans. Well, it is humans. Well, we can't do anything about it. Well, we can't do anything. Well, if we do something about it, then China and India aren't going to do something about it, and it's all a wash. Those are basically the stages. And so, this is the IEA report. Global energy demand grows by more than 1/3 over the period to 2035 in our scenario. China, India, and the Middle East accounting for 60% of that increase. So people will say, look, even if we get our house in order, and I hear this all the time from people who are not in the denialist camp, who are just like, what are you going to do? And you,
right.
Joy, had a question during the break about...
absolutely, because you were talking about what's happening in Germany, we're talking about in Europe, we're saying there's some advancements here in North America and as well as in Europe. But what about China? I mean, if China is the big, elephant in the room in terms of emissions, what are they doing?
So I did a big piece last year for the National Geographic on China and energy, and it's incredibly interesting and complicated. The Chinese are starting to, they're emulating us and burning a lot of coal. They'll never catch up with us in per capita emissions, but they're putting a lot of carbon out in the atmosphere. At the same time, they're leading the world in the installation of renewable technology. 250 million Chinese, when they take a shower at night, the hot water comes off the roof. That's 25% of that population. In this country, solar hot water accounts for less than 1% of our homes, and most of that's for swimming pools. And here's the thing. If you go to the guy who runs the biggest of these solar hot water companies, a guy named Huang Ming, Hemin Solar, in his private museum, the pride of place goes to an old rusting solar panel. Says, do you know what that is? No. That's my best possession. That was one of the solar panels that Jimmy Carter put on the White House in 1979 and Ronald Reagan took down in 1985 because he wanted, manlier forms of energy. It's not that we lack...
It's not that Germany and China solar baron bought that and put it in this private museum in China? I love that story.
We have the technology, we have the entrepreneurs, we just don't have the political will to do anything with it because we've got the Koch brothers and Exxon and everybody else in the way, which is why we're going hard after them.
What we also have, I think, is a reflexive ideological resistance to government playing a big role in this. Yeah. I mean, I hear the China-India line from Republicans all the time. I actually talked to Mitt Romney's policy director a few weeks before the election, and I asked him, what do you think government can do at least to make coal cleaner? Carbon capture and sequestration, which currently doesn't really exist on a usable scale. Right. He said, I don't think government should play a role in it at all.
Right.
So there you go. Right. I mean, there's the barrier.
And yet government should play no role except to provide massive subsidies decade after decade to the fossil fuel industry.
Well, but this is where the tax extenders.
So why not provide a subsidy for cleaner coal?
Right. Well, this is where the tax extenders issue, which I think it brings us nicely full circle, because we started out talking about the fiscal curve. The tax extender issue has gotten very much lost, right? When you stack up the issues, it's down at the bottom, and in fact, whether you pass all the tax extenders or not defines the baseline that you then calculate your savings on. So it actually matters a tremendous amount. In those tax extenders, right, are these renewable energy tax credits. Now, the problem with renewable energy tax credits is that they're constantly sunsetting. And so I know people that work in solar, and I've done reporting on this, and you go out and you say, I want to raise capital investment on a program that's going to have this rate return on investment if and only if the tax cuts get extended, and they sunset every 7 days or whatever the heck they are. I mean, it's like every year, right? So when you can't build in any kind of long-term projection, you can't count on it, that this hurts investment, right?
Absolutely. And we ought to, when we extend it, for a good long period of time. What is I don't know the answer to the question, but what is the length of the various subsidies for coal and oil, which we got to get rid of, but they're not annual.
Well, they're part of the tax code, I think. Right? Yeah, they're not specific provisions that are part of extenders. And they're basically the depletion allowance, for instance. The depletion allowance is just part of the IRS code.
And when you try to have this conversation with Republicans, they yell Solyndra, and then they walk away.
That's the thing, Joy. And I want to put in a plug on this because you rarely hear a bipartisan bill in energy. Congressman Nadler's colleague Mike Thompson, a Democrat, and Ted Poe, a Republican from Texas, are sponsoring a bill right now that would allow renewables companies to have access to what's called a master limited partnership. Now, this is the way you structure a company that oil, gas, pipelines have had for years, but renewables don't get to have it. And it is a perpetual way that can be built into the law to allow them to raise easier capital. Ted Poe, Republican from Texas. But you don't hear about these kind of smaller bills.
That's fascinating. Bill McKibben, people can find out about where 350.org Do the Math Tour is going to be at the website.
At 350.org or math.350.org. And I'll just say this. It's been really exciting. It's sort of a new moment. I mean, look, the environmental movement went dormant for a while, but starting with Keystone, and now people are really waking up. They're understanding that this is the question of a lifetime.
So what do we know that we didn't know last week? My answer is after this.